3 months ago, I had never bought talent for a concert in my entire life. Never. Now I've got shows on a calendar, touring bands coming through, agents in my inbox, guarantees I'm responsible for, ticket counts I'm checking way too fucking often, and I'm having conversations about back-end percentages like I've known what that means my entire life. For reference, I have not. And the weirdest part about all this shit is that I actually spent my entire adult life in the music business. I started in radio when I was 20 years old. I interviewed all the bands. I've been backstage. I've hosted concerts. I've introduced all the bands on stage. I've covered festivals. I've given away more concert tickets than I can ever possibly count. I've watched shows from the side stage, backstage, literally every stage. I've been all over. I've been in the crowd, from the pit, all over the place. Music has actually been part of my job, my life, for more than 25 years. And I thought I understood the music business pretty fucking well until I became a talent buyer. And then I realized I understood my part of the music business. There was this whole other side of the music business that I didn't know anything about. The venue, the money, the negotiations, the offers, the guarantees, the contracts, the ticket counts, the expenses. The question of whether the fucking show should even exist in the first place. And now, somehow, that's my job. So what the fuck am I doing? Welcome to Mikey in the Pit. If you've been following Mikey in the Pit already, you probably know it as the place where I post pretty much all my music shit. You know what I'm saying? Like interviews, concerts, aftershock stuff, music news, videos, pictures, whatever cool shit I was actually doing in the world that weekend or week or whatever. And that's not going away. I'm going to continue to do that. But over the last few months, my relationship with music has changed pretty dramatically because now I'm actually helping put the shows together. I'm currently one of the talent buyers for the Boardwalk in Orangevale, California. And I'm very fucking new at this. I'm learning about guarantees and back ends and holds and riders and radius clauses. I'm learning how to figure out what a band actually is worth in Sacramento. I'm learning that a band can have a shitload of followers online, and that doesn't necessarily mean anybody is going to buy a ticket to see them. I'm learning that sometimes finding the headliner is actually significantly easier than finding two fucking local bands to play with them. And I'm learning just how difficult it is to make the economics of a small independent music venue work. And somewhere in the middle of all this, as I'm learning, I realized, why the hell am I not talking about this? Because I don't want to start this podcast 2 years from now pretending like I know everything and I knew what I was doing the whole time. I do not. I want to document it now while I'm learning. I want to talk about the shows that work, the shows that don't work, the shit I get right, the shit I completely fuck up. Inevitably, that's going to happen. The bands, the agents, the money, the negotiations, the ticket sales, and what it's actually like trying to put people in a small independent music venue in 2026. But I got to tell you, before we get into all that, I should probably explain how the fuck I ended up here in the first place, because this was absolutely not the plan at all. I started working in radio in 2000. I was 20 years old, and that became my entire life. That's really all I ever did professionally, honestly. For more than 2 decades, if someone asked me what I did for a living, the answer was very, very easy. I just would say, I work in radio. And then they would ask a bunch of other questions after that. But obviously music was a massive part of that. Concerts, festivals, artist interviews, promotions, finding new music, meeting bands, introducing bands on stage, backstage, being around artists, all that shit, man. Talking about music every single day. And when you spend that much time around something, naturally you start thinking you understand how it works. And I did understand a lot of it. I understood audiences. I understood promotions. I understood how to talk about a show. I understood how to make people excited about something. I knew how to take an artist that maybe somebody hadn't heard of yet and explain why you should give a shit about them. It was all part of the job. But here's what I understand now that I didn't understand then. I knew what happened after somebody else had already done all the fucking hard shit. You know, somebody already booked the concert. Somebody already negotiated the deal. Somebody figured out the guarantee or the back end and all that other stuff, man. Somebody decided what the price of the tickets should be. Somebody figured out whether the band could actually sell enough tickets in Sacramento to make the whole thing work. That wasn't my problem. Then eventually the concert would appear on our calendar at the radio station. The promoter would send us tickets and we would give them away, and maybe we'd interview somebody from the band, or, you know, maybe we'd talk about the show on the air. We'd show up if they wanted us to be there. Maybe we'd get up on stage and introduce the band, stuff like that. Maybe I hung out backstage with some cool people. Maybe I drank somebody else's beer. Maybe I smoked somebody else's weed. Maybe I fucked somebody else's girl. All those things happened back then. But then I would go home. I never had to sit there for months earlier trying to figure out how to make this whole thing actually work. How many tickets can this band actually sell? What's my break even? What happens if this thing only sells 80 tickets and I needed to sell 200? I didn't know any of that shit at all. I didn't care about any of that stuff. And then November 4th, 2022 happened. I got fired. After more than 20 years in radio, I was just done. And I'm not going to turn this into an episode about the guy who fired me. That guy sucks. He's an asshole. He knows who he is. That's a completely different podcast that I've already done. I probably could do a couple other episodes, but I'm not gonna. But the important part is that suddenly the only career I had ever known was gone. And radio wasn't exactly thriving at the time. Stations weren't hiring people everywhere, all over the place. Actually, quite the opposite. And I couldn't just pack my shit and move across the country chasing another radio job like I've done most of my life. My life is here. My family is here. My daughter is here. Sacramento is home now. So now I had to figure out what the hell I was going to do with the rest of my life because I planned on being in radio. I went through a really, really, really dark period during that time because losing radio, losing that job wasn't just losing a paycheck. And I think this happens to a lot of people who spend a really long time doing one thing. It becomes part of who you are. It becomes a part of how you understand yourself. So for my entire adult life, what do? I work in radio. Easy. Now I didn't. And I didn't have a plan B. But eventually, obviously, I had to get another job. So what did I do? I entered the corporate world, and holy shit, I discovered very quickly that I have absolutely no idea how to be a normal functioning human with a real job in an office. Now, I got to say, before I say anything, I want to be clear on something. The company that I went to go work for wasn't some horrible place. There's actually really cool people that work there. And honestly, it was a pretty decent job. Most people would have loved it. Not me. I fucking hated it. Because it wasn't me. I've spent, again, my entire adult life in radio stations, recording studios, concert venues, all rock stars, all that stuff. Now I'm sitting here in meetings, hearing people say things like circle back. Like, I don't circle back. I don't even know how to circle back or what we're circling. Just tell me what the fuck you want me to do and I'll do it. All right? But I was miserable. And during all of that, I still kept a little piece of me. I still kept doing the Mikey podcast. And that's really, really important because as I was doing the Mikey podcast and creating those episodes, to be clear, the Mikey podcast actually started while I was still in radio because radio wanted us to branch out a little bit. So I created that in 2020, I believe. And I kept doing that. Like I said, it's sort of important part of the story because I thought maybe this is what I do next. And the Mikey podcast was actually doing pretty well. I mean, it wasn't paying all my bills or anything like that. I wasn't going to retire off of it, but people listened to it. It made some money. There was an audience there. And instead of just thinking about podcasting as something that I did behind the microphone, I started learning pretty much everything there is to possibly learn about the rest of it. It's the same thing I did in radio. I learned the production side of it, the editing side of it, the marketing side of it, distribution, building an audience, creating content around the show. And then I started producing podcasts for other people because I'm pretty good at that. And I slowly started realizing that these random things that I learned during my radio career actually had some value outside of a radio station, thank God. Now, I knew audio, I knew production, I knew promotions, I knew marketing, I knew events. I said all this stuff. I knew how to entertain people. I knew how to build an audience already, all right? So somewhere around 2023, I decided to create Muscatello Media. Now, let's not make it sound more impressive than what it was at the beginning. I created an LLC. Congratulations, I'm a businessman now. But what the fuck do I do with it? Now, at first, not a whole lot. Honestly, I just started putting some of my podcast money, income, a little bit that was coming through that. And then I started producing more shows for other people and other podcasts. And I started figuring out how I could turn these skills into an actual business. And for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't really trying to figure out who was going to hire me. I was starting to think about how do I hire myself, if that makes sense. And that honestly ended up changing everything for me. Because somewhere in the middle of all this, the Boardwalk enters the story. And this actually started before I had any idea that I'd eventually be working with them. I had done a Mikey podcast Christmas event at the Boardwalk, and it was really, really successful. Pretty much sold the place out. It was a great time. That's where I actually met the owner of the Boardwalk. His name is Derek. And we had talked a little bit, and he had mentioned wanting to do a podcast for the venue. I thought that was a really cool idea. We talked about it a little bit, and then nothing. You know, it happens. Not that big of a deal. We both went on with our lives and eventually pretty much just lost touch. Meanwhile, I'm still working that stupid corporate job, still doing the Mikey podcast, trying to grow that, and still trying to figure out exactly what Muscatello Media is or going to be. And then another piece of my old life fell right back into my lap. It just came back. It was my old radio show. I brought back my old Sacramento radio show as a podcast called Not That Damn Show. And people actually came back. It worked. Now, again, we're not over here buying private jets or anything, but, it has an audience. People like it. People are excited about it. It started becoming a much, much bigger focus for me. And then I did something incredibly intelligent. While working at this corporate job, still doing these podcasts, the corporate job that I told you I already fucking hated, I mentioned on the podcast that I fucking hated working there. And apparently somebody from that company heard it and didn't like it. And I got fired. Again. Now, at the time, terrifying. Looking back, that might have been one of the best things that ever happened to me, because suddenly there was no comfortable backup plan anymore. If Muscatello Media was ever going to become a real business, now would be a pretty fucking good time to make that happen. So I just fucking started hustling, finding more podcast clients, producing more shows, editing more, marketing more, trying to turn all of this that I knew into an actual living. And then it hit me. I remembered Derek wanted to do a Boardwalk podcast. So I reached back out to him. We connected again. I pitched him, on letting me produce the Boardwalk podcast. He went for it. And that's sort of where my current relationship with the Boardwalk started. First, it was the podcast. Then they asked if I could do some graphics for them. Then they wanted some marketing help. Then a little more, and then a little more. And then slowly Muscatello Media and the Boardwalk started working together pretty regularly. And at the same time, something else was happening in the back. I was starting to find my way back into the music business. You see, the Mikey podcast has sort of become its own thing. It was news, it was satire, it was conspiracies, it was weird stories, politics sometimes, just bizarre shit happening in the world. And I love doing it. But I also realized I still wanted to be a part of the music industry. I wanted to interview bands. I wanted to cover festivals. I wanted to go to concerts. I wanted to work with artists. And I didn't necessarily want every band or publicist or festival music industry person I ever contacted to have to sort through whatever insane shit I talked about on the Mikey podcast that week. So those things needed some sort of separation, So in 2025, I created Mikey in the Pit. This became the home for the music side of my life. Music news, concerts, interviews, aftershock stuff, photos, videos, bands, new music, everything I loved about the music side of radio. And it started going pretty quickly. I mean, we're close to about 6,000 followers there. There are bands following me, people in the music industry, music fans. And without really even realizing it at first, I sort of started to build my way back into the music business. I just wasn't doing it through a radio station or anything like that anymore. I was doing it myself. Then in August 2025, just last year, we did another live podcast there, but it was with Not That Damn Show. We did a live Not That Damn Show event at the Boardwalk. And this thing was fucking awesome. We put together a live podcast. We had music on after it. We had sponsors. We had a party afterwards. We pretty much sold the place out. Now, Derek had seen me now at this point put together multiple successful events at his venue. And somewhere along the way, he started telling me, hey, you should start booking shows here. Blah, blah, blah. And I basically kept saying no. Like, that's not something I wanted to do because I didn't know anything about how to book bands. I didn't know how the music industry, that side of the industry, even worked. I mean, I knew how to market an event. I knew how to host an event. I knew how to get sponsors, and I knew how to make content around an event. But actually negotiating with an agent and buying talent and all that, no fucking clue. Then we get into the spring of 2026. Derek wanted to make some changes over at the Boardwalk with the way booking was being handled and some marketing and stuff like that. And it came to me a little bit more seriously. He's like, you've thrown some successful events here. You've been producing my podcast. You know people. You understand music. You understand Sacramento. Maybe you should start doing this. And I had one major condition. This was a big holdup for me. I didn't want another job. I didn't want to become a Boardwalk employee. I'd spent the last few years building Muscatello Media, so because of that, I wanted to work for myself. That's why I did it. If I was going to do this with the Boardwalk, then basically I wanted to work for my own company. I wanted the Boardwalk and my company to work together. So we figured out a deal, and at the end of May 2026, it became official. Muscatello Media would work with the Boardwalk on booking and marketing and making shows happen. And suddenly, out of nowhere, with that moment, I am now a talent buyer. And my first big project wasn't even really booking a national show or anything like that. It was actually rebuilding the Boardwalk, which we're sort of in the process of doing right now. We're kind of rebuilding it to what the Boardwalk could be. And we spent about a month working on a few things outside. We built this outdoor patio area. If you haven't been to the Boardwalk, we've got this outside patio that's we turned into an actual destination. It's awesome now, man. We added shade. You could sit out there. We got misters to keep everybody cool because it's fucking hot as hell in Sacramento. Apparently, when in the summer in Sacramento, we're located about 6 feet away from the surface of the sun, so we need to keep people cool. And there's a little small stage out there. We have acoustic performances. It's pretty awesome. We're building a patio bar, all kinds of stuff. I mean, the idea of this is that the Boardwalk shouldn't only just be someplace you go to, when you want to see a particular band or that just happens to be playing there or whatever. It should be someplace you actually want to hang out. So for the 4th of July weekend, that was basically our launch of this. We had bands, we had acoustic music outside, we had line dancing on the inside, we had a barbecue, just a bunch of different things happening throughout the weekend. And it was really good. I mean, everybody was pretty successful. People showed up, people had fun, people came out and seemed to have a really good time. But to me, it wasn't as big as I wanted it to be. The point of it was to get people to come out there and sort of just re-know the Boardwalk, because the Boardwalk from back in the day is a little different than what the Boardwalk was right now. And we'll never be the Boardwalk from back in the day. It's just not possible, just because of the way economics are, the way the industry is right now. But the point was to make the Boardwalk cool again, because for a few years, it wasn't very cool. And it's not because of Derek or his wife or anything, because they bought the Boardwalk to keep it alive, but they had no idea what they were doing. They had never been involved in the music industry or anything like that. So they didn't know. And they were doing everything they could. They were getting screwed over by bands. They were getting screwed over by agents. They were losing money left and right, but they were doing what they thought was the right thing to do. And it definitely made the Boardwalk not exactly cool. So the point of that month of rebuilding and sort of planning and thinking some things out was to how can we make the Boardwalk cool again? And one of the ways was to sort of expand out on the patio, like I said, and then start bringing in some better bands and start making people happy. When they come here, they leave and they're like, God, I had such a great time there. So that was the point of the 4th of July, was have people come, they have a great time, they leave and like, wow, I had a great time there. But like I said, not as many people as I wanted to be there showed up. It was a successful weekend, but it could have been better. And that taught me something almost immediately. Okay, because you can change a venue. You just can't really change people's perception of the venue as fast as you can change the venue. The Boardwalk had been around forever. A lot of people had memories there. Some good, some not so good, some doing blow in the bathroom. And part of what we were doing, like I said, was rebuilding that relationship, not just with people, but with the local music community. Okay, you can't just put a post up saying, hey, we're cool again. And then everyone goes, oh, hey, the Boardwalk's fucking cool again. Let's go there. No, that's not how reality works. That's just not how anything works. Okay, you've got to fucking prove it. And you got to prove it over and over and over again. And that's something I'm still learning to do right now. I'm doing everything I can. If you go and look at the events page at rocktheboardwalk.com, there's some pretty cool shows there, and we got a lot of really cool shows that are still going to be announced. But that was the rebuilding, beginning to rebrand and create that patio area first. Because after that came the actual booking of bands. August 28th is actually going to be my first show that I put together. It's 3 pretty cool local bands, pretty straightforward. You can, again, go to rocktheboardwalk.com. They've got tickets to sell. We're selling tickets online. Everybody promotes it. People come. Easy, right? Except it turns out that putting 3 good local bands on a flyer doesn't just cause 300 humans to magically appear in Orangevale. Who knew? And that's another part that I want to get to in all of this. Okay, there's a massive difference between we're excited to play and we sold 50 tickets. Local matters enormously to a small venue, but figuring out which bands actually move people, which combinations work together, how often bands are willing to play locally, what fans are willing to pay. There's a whole science to this that I did not know existed. And then came my big show, my first big show. I'm talking about Kyle Smith. Kyle Smith is a Cali reggae artist. All right, think like Sublime, Slightly Stupid, Dirty Heads, that whole genre, which I fucking love, to be honest with you. So this is a really cool show for me. This is the first touring artist I've ever booked. Now I'm actually negotiating with an agent, and suddenly I'm seeing words and numbers that I understand individually, but not necessarily when somebody puts them together like in a sentence. It's like, I don't, what are you talking about? Guarantees, back ends, VIPs, radius stat. What the fuck? What are you talking about? Hospitality? Support, break even? I don't know what's going on. And I'm over back and forth between Derek and my other booker, Troy. I got questions. I'm trying to do math. I'm trying to understand how all this works while still also trying to not sound like the guy who just started doing this 3 weeks ago, which, if you remember, I was. And if you're listening right now and you don't know what a back end is or how guarantees work, don't worry about it. We're going to get into all of that shit right here on this podcast, because I didn't know half of that shit either. I didn't know most of it, actually. And that really is the point of this. But anyway, we get to the deal done with Kyle Smith. He's playing at the Boardwalk September 4th. And as I'm recording this, we roughly have about 3 weeks, I guess. And we sold around 100 tickets. And I really need somewhere like 200 people to get into that room. So now I've discovered a whole nother wonderful part about buying talent. You don't book the show and then move on with your life. Oh, no. You book the show and then you spend the next several weeks staring at fucking ticket counts. You know, you're like, oh, 78, refresh. Damn, 78, fuck, refresh again. 79, we're back, baby. It's like looking at every single ticket that sells. And then nothing happens for 6 hours and you're immediately depressed. And then another ticket sells and you're happy. And then a day goes by, nobody buys tickets and you're like, fuck, I'm going to get fired. But apparently that's my life now. But since Kyle, I have kept booking. We've got Safety Orange coming in, which is awesome. I've got Necromantics and a couple other really cool bands. I got a bunch of shows that I'm working on, and it's pretty cool. And then came one of the first negotiations that really, really, really kind of made my brain melt. And I'm talking about the show I just mentioned, Necromantics. This is where I started getting into more complicated conversations about guarantees and back-end percentages and where the back end starts at what ticket point and, you know, what counts as an expense. And is this one of those situations where the deal seems better than, you know, I don't know. It's just really fucking confusing. Okay. It's like, is this a reasonable deal? Is the band going to be happy? Are we going to make money? And when you actually sit down and do the math and you say like, oh, fuck, this is not good for anybody. There's this weird balancing act when you're doing this. Okay. And I'm starting to understand it. The artist needs to make money. That's what I want. I want the artist to make money. Of course they do. Touring is expensive as shit, dude. Agents have a responsibility to get the best possible deal for their client. That's their job. Totally understand that. But the Boardwalk also has to make some money. We have people that work for us, okay? Or the absolute minimum, we have to at least break even. We have to, and these shows have to make enough economic sense for us to be able to keep doing shows. Because I can book the greatest band on earth. If every time I do it, the venue loses $5,000, I'm probably not going to be a talent buyer for very long. But on the other hand, if I send agents shitty offers all the time, where the band takes a look at this and they're like, no, and the band takes all the risk, get out of here. Nobody's going to want to work with me. No one's going to want to play the show or even play the Boardwalk. And now somewhere in between those two things, that's where the job is. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's a balancing act. I want the bands to be successful. I want the Boardwalk to be successful. The agent, I don't really care so much about, but I want to have good relationships with the agent. If the band is successful, the agent is successful, if the show is successful, everybody's successful. So I'm trying to figure that out. And I'm trying to build these relationships with people who have no fucking idea who I even am. Mikey, who the fuck is this Mikey guy? You know, I'm used to booking at one of these other venues with, you know, so-and-so. Who the fuck is this Mikey guy? I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to, fuck you. You're going to talk to me because I'm going to be in your ear and I'm going to harass the shit out of you. We're going to become best fucking friends. And you better hope I never, ever, ever have to go to a convention. Oh, I hate conventions. But if you put me in a convention, I will meet every single agent that's in there. We will become best friends. You will be buying me drinks by the end of the night. I promise you that. And we'll be booking shows right then and there. But I'm learning all this. Okay, I'm learning that booking a band isn't really the job. Making the deal work is the job for the artist, for the venue, and ultimately, most importantly, for the person buying the ticket. Because that's what I want. I want you to be happy. I want the person coming to the show to have a great time. I want to make sure the math works. If I'm charging you $60 to see a band at a 300-person venue, I don't want to do that because that's insane. I want to be able to charge you 20, 25, 30 at the most, you know, because who's going to do that? That's a lot of money to spend to go see a band. All right. And you start to think about this math stuff and you're like, fuck, that's just one problem. And now I got another fucking problem. And this is a problem I didn't expect at all. Because, I never thought this would be a big deal. But, you find a band, one of the most difficult parts about the rest of the job is finding support bands. Seriously, I spend all this time trying to find a good touring artist to bring him here. I think people are going to be great. Talk to the agent. I negotiate the deal. I get the date, make the deal. Awesome. We're in, man. This is going to be great. We're done. Nope. Who plays with them? Who's going to open the show? Who's going to do support? Do they fit? Are they good? Are they even available that night? Did they already play Sacramento 2 weeks ago? Are they playing Sacramento 2 weeks from now? Are they willing to sell tickets? That's the biggest question. Can they sell tickets? Do people actually give a shit about them? Will they answer their fucking Instagram messages? And in the case of Necromantrix, do they have an upright bass? Those things matter. I know these are the things I think about though. And it's part of the business. It really is. You got to think about all that, how this is all going to fit together. But it's a part that nobody else sees. The fans don't see this. You come to the show, you see 3 bands on a poster. You didn't see the 37 emails and Instagram messages and all the data I went through, the scheduling conflicts, the text messages, the phone calls, the damn, we'd love to, but our drummer's getting married that weekend and blah, 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 blah. Or you just end up going and you just see the poster. All right. And that's sort of what I'm kind of becoming fascinated by. All the shit that happens before you ever walk through that door. That's the shit right now that I'm becoming obsessed with. And honestly, that's really why I'm doing this now. It's August 2026. I've been a talent buyer for 37 hours, basically. I absolutely do not have everything figured out, not even close. And I don't want to pretend like I do. Actually, I think it would be incredibly boring if I did. I may not even like the job. But I'm doing this right now for Mikey in the Pit because I want to document this while I'm learning it. I want to talk about what bands actually cost, how offers work, how tickets, why they cost what they cost. Why a 300-something capacity venue actually has to bring what we have to bring in to survive. How can you have what looks like a pretty good crowd in the room and still lose money? Why local bands matter. What an agent actually even does. Why touring has become so fucking expensive. Then there's merch and ticket fees and guarantees and support and promos and venue reputation. And probably the biggest thing, why small live music venues are having such a hard time right now. Because something doesn't add up, if you think about it, right? Fans think the tickets cost too much. They're not wrong. They're 100% right. Bands are saying that touring is becoming even harder and harder and harder financially. They're not wrong either. Small venues are struggling to survive, which is 100% true. So if the fan feels broke, the band feels broke, and the venue feels broke, where the fuck is the money going? I want to understand that. And I want to bring that to people. I want to show them that on this show. I want people to understand what it is that I do, what agents do, what bands do, promoters and venues, what venue owners do, what tour managers do, sound engineers, people who've spent their entire careers doing this. And if I'm wrong about it, tell me. I actually want to be part of this because I'm going to fuck things up. I guarantee it. I'm going to make bad offers. I'm going to probably book something I think is going to sell, 1,000 tickets or whatever, and it's going to completely eat shit. I'm probably going to pass on something and then watch them sell out somewhere else and wonder, what the fuck was I thinking? But that's part of learning. And that's part of learning all this. And you're going to watch it all happen in real time. Or listen to it happen. It depends. I want to put this stuff on Facebook and Instagram too. But that somehow actually sounds even more humiliating if I do that. But you know what? Whatever. I'm going to do it in person. I'm going to do it in front of a live audience because that's all I know how to be doing is things in front of live audiences. And if I fail miserably, you're going to feel the effects with me and you're going to fail too. All right, I got to wrap this up because this has gone on way longer than I wanted it to. But to be clear, I spent more than 2 decades around live music. And it took becoming a talent buyer to realize how very little I actually know about how live music works. So that's where we're starting. That's where we're at. I'm going to take you through this whole thing. I'm going to take you through how the show works, how shows work. I'm going to take you through the ones that do work, the ones that don't work, the negotiations, the ticket counts, the bands, the agents, the mistakes, and everything I'm learning. Everything I'm learning about what it takes to keep a small independent music venue alive in 2026. Because I think there's a massive disconnect in what's happening in live music right now. Bands think venues are making all the money. Venues are looking around wondering where the fuck the money went. And fans think, like I said, tickets cost too much, and nobody is wrong here. Okay, artists can't afford a tour. Small venues are just disappearing, and we need small venues. And somehow, all of us are supposed to make this thing work. What's going on here? Where is the money? So for 20 years, I stood on one side of the stage, and now I'm finally trying to figure out what happens on the other side of the stage. I'm Mikey. This is Mikey in the Pit. And apparently, I'm a fucking talent buyer now.